To be joined by Baroness Claire Fox. She's an independent peer and the director of the Academy of Ideas. Good morning to you.
Morning.
And thank you so much for joining us. So much I want to get through. Let's get straight to it. Where are you? I'm sure you think, is it a good thing or a bad thing? I can't guess your answer. There are more than 70 Channel boat migrants, illegal migrants to this country, who had their mobile phones seized and opened and searched basically for information about how they got there, the criminality. Have won payouts now totalling almost £500,000, plus almost £750,000 spent on legal fees by the Home Office challenging this, because basically it was not legal for the authorities to seize their phones at the time.
If you were trying to make up a story that would turbocharge a populist revolt, it would be something like this. The fact that it's true, but it just doesn't even bear contemplating.
You don't have to make up stories about this topic ever.
No. The thing that's extraordinary is that obviously when the police are doing investigations, you know, they could raid someone's house and seize all their phones and their computers and so on. And they are, by the way, innocent until proven guilty. And say they got let off, they don't get compensation. They actually just get their equipment back. So this is an extraordinary story. The first point, of course, is, isn't it interesting that they all had those mobile phones? It seems weird to me that when the police seized the mobile phones, they never seem to find anything dodgy on them anyway, right? But what's now happened is they're seizing the mobile phones. These are people fleeing, apparently, from war and hardship and terrible terrors, and they've all got their mobile phones.
You would not, no, to be fair, I think you would need a mobile phone because you have to contact with your people smuggler, for goodness sake. You know.
I know, but well, that's true, to organise your illegal entry.
We know
into the
they're
country.
not destitute. They paid £3,000 to get on the boat.
They also making often TikTok videos of the exciting journey they're on. So, you know, this is a sort of sordid story before you get anywhere. They then seize the mobile phones. There doesn't appear to be anything on those mobile phones that are ever used in police investigations. But then, anyway, they're then, as we know, compensated. By the way, the bill for this could be, and it's climbing, could be up to, at the moment, they're saying it could reach 8 million.
Because once everyone finds out. But what I don't understand is, A, how wasn't it illegal? Why was it illegal? And why didn't the Home Office know it was? Well, the thing I don't get is, you say, if you were arrested right now, let's face it, it's only a matter of time, you and me, your phone would be taken. So why is it not, given that they've already committed a crime by entering the country illegally?
And would you believe, if you divide it up according to some of the newspapers, it's 6,500 per individual who's had their mobile phone. It's worth having your mobile phone seized if you get $6,500 back.
And this is the thing. There are people who have, severe injuries who don't get that sort of compensation. People who go to court who don't, have actual, physical injury to themselves or damage when someone has committed a crime against them. They get a few £100. They don't get £6,000. I mean, I have my bag stolen. I'm allowed to apply for compensation. I'm like, are we kidding? If you're ever going to prosecute the guy, and then he's not going to have any money to pay me compensation. But I don't want the country to pay it to me.
I was recently at a meeting in which we heard from three people who were the victims of miscarriages of justice. One of them was inside for 38 years and totally innocent, exonerated. Another for 28 years, another for 13 years. Only one of those three were in line for financial compensation. The other two weren't. And the state locked them up and ruined their lives. And they were innocent. And now you hear this. It really is.
No, but even if
chillingly blood-curdling.
Even if you do get compensation when you've been in prison for something you didn't commit, you still have to pay for your room and board for the years you're in prison, which is genuinely an abomination of justice. But there we are. But if they were illegal migrants, they'd probably be fine. I say you can't make up these stories because they are so ludicrous, and yet it's what's going on. This one, again, I always have to double check these ones because I'm like, this must be something made up. No, it's not. A Filipino migrant. Because, again, Philippines, terrible place to live. I mean, God, we go on holiday there, don't we? We would like to. A migrant Filipino, a man, received sex change treatment on the NHS worth tens of thousands of pounds while applying to remain in the UK. He entered Britain. I love this copy. He entered Britain as a man several years ago, but underwent the health service-backed gender reassignment procedure to become a woman. He didn't become a woman, he was still a man. He just had some surgery. But he got NHS free treatment for gender reassignment, and after the surgery, he changed his pronouns and all of that. But he got it even though. I mean, he wasn't even a British citizen. He didn't have the right to stay in the UK. I literally don't understand on what basis he's eligible for this treatment. And I don't understand particularly why people are waiting. You know, I've got a couple of relatives who just have to pay, you know, £10,000 plus, you know, for hip operations and knee operations, having contributed all their lives in taxes. But someone who's just arrived here, who's got no right to be here at that point, and is getting tens of thousands of pounds worth of non-essential surgery, all paid for by us. This is an abomination.
So that's the point. Gender reassignment for adults is non-essential surgery. It's already ambivalent as to whether the NHS should be prioritising it anyway. To give that to somebody who has not been given leave to remain, as you say, a Filipino migrant who's actually not necessarily got any right to be in the country, is, as you say, you know, you couldn't make it up. But one thing to note was this was done by Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, 40% of their patients miss the treatment target that's been set by the government.
Yeah.
So how on earth did they make, because this is not simple surgery. This is complicated surgery. So imagine the amount of time that consultants and doctors and nurses had to spend on that individual to actually adhere to their whim rather than a serious medical operation. Now, if I'd heard that this person had, I don't know, a brain tumour and was dying and so on.
We're a civilised country.
You would think that this was a humane action. In fact, this was part of a politicised intervention by the NHS, that they would say that this zoomed up the list of important operations that should happen in that hospital.
Yeah,
I was genuinely shocked to read it.
Some of the treatment took place there, but then the actual treatments was in a private hospital, but again paid for by us. But again, that private hospital could have been dealing with a lot of the NHS treatments that are also prioritized.
Exactly.
It's the same
All I'm
difference.
saying is it was organised by an NHS hospital.
Still paying for it. Yeah.
Exactly.
It is mind-blowing, isn't it? Again, it's all these stories very much will involve migrants. This is very interesting. The Trump administration is in talks to basically offer refugee status to Hamit Kuşkan. He is a Turkish man who fled he fled Turkey because he was an apostate. You know, he was no longer a Muslim. He burnt a Koran while he was a refugee here in the UK. He burnt a Koran as he is entitled to do outside the Turkish embassy. He wasn't outside a mosque. He wasn't causing. He was attacked in the most outrageous way. It's on video by a man who went to go and get a knife to stab him, who didn't even face any prison time, attempted to stab him. He basically is accused of, to all intents and purposes, blasphemy. We've got the CPS contesting decision in the court hearing in the High Court tomorrow, basically for him to basically. It's complicated. He was able to overturn his conviction for a religiously aggravated public order offence after he burnt the Quran outside the Turkish embassy. The CPS is using our resources to challenge that in the High Court tomorrow. And basically, if he loses that case and therefore effectively will have been found to have been guilty of committing a blasphemous crime, even though of course we don't have that law in this country, the Americans have said, we will take you as a refugee from Britain. I mean, this is a source of national disgrace, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's a stunt by the US, by the United States, but, you can't blame them for playing that stunt and making the point once more that there's a free speech problem in the UK, because there is. And I think it is genuinely a shocking story that, first of all, the CPS ever charged him for this. Now, I'd just like to point out that burning a Quran is not the way I would conduct politics.
I'm with you.
Particularly aggravating, but it is not illegal. But anyway, the CPS chose to charge him. They changed the charges, as you say, and actually in court, the judge initially said a very sensible thing, which is it might be unpleasant, it might be offensive, it might be all of these things, but it's not against the law. And now the CPS are trying to overturn that innocent verdict. So the CPS has something to answer for. And genuinely, it's shocking that the man who stabbed him viciously stabbed him
on camera.
For doing this on camera. So we were all able to witness it. Did not get sent to prison.
Yeah.
So when people feel that there's a two-tiered justice system, they've got a point. And it's possibly the case that he will now be found guilty. But why are the CPS? This is the Crown Prosecution Service. Why are they pursuing this in a vindictive way when actually they seem to be trying to get a blasphemy law on the
by
books?
the back door? The Prime Minister was asked about this, wasn't he, by a backbench MP a little while back and PMQs, and he didn't say categorically we will not have a blasphemy law in this country. But we all know it's only going to be a blasphemy law for one religion. Even in the first court case, which Hamid Koskar lost,
at the same
the judge actually said that one of the arguments for arguing why he'd committed a crime was because it had provoked an aggressive attack from someone. So somehow the man coming out of the Turkish embassy with a knife to stab him was proof that he had committed a crime by provoking the man with the knife. That is a genuinely terrifying thing for a judge to have said, not a prosecutor, a judge.
Well, that's exactly right, because I think what we get here is the excuse that the police are using fairly regularly. They used it in Birmingham in relation to the Tel Aviv fans, which is we can't let them in because they will lead to an attack by local people. That's why they actually banned that march recently, that slightly cranky Christian march organised by UKIP through Tower Hamlets. The police said it will lead to violence in the local community, so we're going to ban the march. So in this instance, we have a situation in which somebody is said to do something provocative, and because they could then aggravate someone to be violent and stab them, they are the criminal. And this is happening at the very same time that this government is going to bring in hostility to Muslims, to Islam guidance. And you just know that this is going to create this atmosphere of you can't say that.
Absolutely.
You can't actually provoke anyone if they happen to be a Muslim. Not something, by the way, that most Muslims want.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just I want to get you just really, really briefly, because I'm way over time, but this story about the Labour Together, the think tank, which basically was led by Morgan McSweeney, the former chief of staff until last weekend of the Prime Minister, that they had basically tried to hired an American company to smear two Sunday Times journalists and look into their background. The smears, involved, the fact that one of the journalists was Jewish, etc. Even though what they'd done was simply write a story exposing Labour Together for not declaring all of their donations. What do you make of that? Just very briefly.
Very dirty tricks here. Labour Together were accused by the journalists who did a good investigative job of actually messing around and getting far too much in by way of donations to the Labour Party. And the response of Labour Together, who were the people accused of this, was to get an American PR company to investigate and set up a dodgy dossier about them using all that personal information. The significant thing, of course, is that one of the Labour Together guys, Josh Simons, an MP, is now a junior minister from the Cabinet Office. And what's the government's response to this? To set up an investigation by the Cabinet Office into this. It should be said that when they got this dossier, Josh Simons, who's quite a good bloke, actually, nice young Labour MP, he said, they went too far in their investigation. Why did they actually pay them in the first place? But secondly, if they went too far, he shared it with cabinet ministers and around the Labour Party, and none of them whistle blew this. None of them said it was disgusting. It's only now that it's come out that they've all started.
Exactly. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Covered so much ground there. Baroness Claire Fawkes. It's just coming up to 10:50. Up next, we're going to talk about defence spending and